All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Year 11 open house. My name is Salome Sega. I'm the director of New Ink, and I'm so excited to host you in our home. Today, a couple housekeeping notes before we jump into this. This session will be recorded and will be posted on YouTube, and we'll email everyone here and online the link. We do have friends not only in physical space, but on Zoom. So you might catch us pointing to people online. Brian over there is our Zoom doula. So yeah, our portal to the online world. And then lastly, Shantae, our marketing and communications assistant, is walking around, just kind of documenting the evening. Might post some things to social. If you do not want to be photographed, just like tap her and let her know before you leave tonight. All right, I think that's all my housekeeping. Let's jump into it. All right. So here's our agenda for today. The New Ink staff will give an introduction to our program and our offerings, and then we'll break for a little bit of a Q&A then. We'll also share how to submit the optimal New Ink application. From there, you'll get to meet a couple of our alumni or current members and mentors in the program. They're here. They're part of the Year 10 cohort. And then we'll also break after that for a brief Q&A, and then we'll just kind of mix and mingle in the space. We have wine, we have food, we have empanadas that are coming out. Sorry, Zoom people, it's dinner time. I hope you're eating something at home. So, okay, New Ink team. Here's the full team. There's 7 of us. You'll hear from most of the team on the mic today. So again, I'm Salome, the director. Raul is our deputy director, waving over there. Paul John is our head of community, waving behind you. And then Gatch is like controlling all the things right now. Yes, the hand in the cam is our production coordinator. Brian is our programs manager / Zoom doula. Shantae is a marketing and communications assistant. I lost you, but you're in the room. Yes. And then Asmani is our department coordinator in the front over here. Okay, so New Ink is the New Museum's cultural incubator that supports creative practitioners working across art, design, and technology. I like to say we're very much a home for the misfits, for the people who don't neatly fit into any one discipline. We help people launch ambitious projects, initiatives, or businesses through a year-long program. So the 4 things that we provide are professional development, which Brian will speak to. We offer mentorship, which Paul will speak to. Community, because we are more than our work, we're people first. And then a shared workspace, so that is where we are now. And then the 5th thing is that we've started to introduce in the last couple years is public presentation of your work. It's super important to us that the right audiences are seeing the things that you're incubating in our program, and that also we're connecting you with people who can advance your projects. So some overall statistics, 10 years into the program, we have over 600 alumni. We support a community of about 100 people each year. We have 150 mentors who join us to support the members each year. And to date, New Inkers have reported that they've helped create nearly 600 jobs. They've helped to create or retain over 300 businesses. And New Inkers are really good at raising money. They've raised over $27 million to sustain their projects. So a little bit about this specific cohort that we're in right now, the Year 10 cohort. There are 58 projects, which, because some people have joined as collectives, means that there are 70 people. And then we have 46 community members who kind of serve as at-large members or are alumni. And so the demographic breakdown of the cohort is listed here. So you can see we are majority BIPOC, majority WIM, and gender nonconforming folks. We aim to be representative of the city that we're in, which is New York. So I'm going to share just a few alumni, and again, you're going to hear from members shortly. So the Black School is a program or a project that was in our cohort in year 6, and they're a school for radical design education based in New Orleans, and it's founded by Shawnee Peters and Joseph Coulier. They have a really rich apprentice program for young people interested in graphic design and all sorts of design. Really, they've expanded to industrial design as well. While at New Inc., they raised a successful $300,000 crowdfunding campaign, and then they were able to use that campaign to leverage funds from foundations. And so they've purchased land in New Orleans where the schoolhouse will be, and they've begun building it, and it will be complete by sometime 2025. Another project is Movers and Shakers, or Kinfolk. They were in our program in year 6, and they're very much invested in a contemporary conversation we're having about monuments and who we decide to celebrate or commemorate in public space. So they've built an augmented reality app that overlays existing monuments with people we should instead be celebrating. They've received it's listed here as a $1.8 million Mellon Foundation grant. It's actually $3 million as of just a couple of weeks ago, which is exciting. And through our program, they were able to cultivate all kinds of corporate partnerships. And then the last alumni I'll share here is Laura Splan, who is a member with us for 2 years. Her work sits at the intersection of art and science, and she's really interested in visualizing biological phenomena that are happening at scales that we just, like, as people cannot comprehend because they're just so microscopic. She's done a year-long research project on epigenetics, and so she's also in the inaugural resident of a program we launched last year with the EY Metaverse Lab. She's a resident with them where she's been able to build a lot of her projects at scale, and one of her projects, Metafrictions, will premiere at the end of this year as part of Getty's Pacific Standard Time. Okay, so tracks. Here to tell you about the tracks, because when you apply to New Inc., you apply to sit on one of our 5 tracks, and they all come with special partnerships or relationships. So the first 3 tracks here are really mainstay tracks. They've been with us for a really long time. So Art and Code is a track we run in partnership with Rhizome, which is an organization that sits from our space. They sit in that corner back there. And on that track, we support creative practitioners who are experimenting with software and hardware as artistic mediums. The second track here is Creative Science, which supports creative practitioners who are employing modes of scientific inquiry in their work. Again, this is where kind of our arts and sciences work sits, and that track is supported by Simons Foundation. And then our XR track, I think, is a track a lot of people know us for. It's where all of our virtual reality, augmented reality, immersive sound work sits. And then Social Architecture is a relatively new track, but I would say has been with us really from the beginning. It's where artists, designers, architects who are thinking about ways to make social and public space more inclusive sit. And then Cooperative Studies is also a new track. We've run it just for 1 year now. And it's a track that supports artists and community organizers and business owners, people who are thinking about kind of new care-based models for doing their work. So people who are interested in, like, cooperative models for organizing or doing business, worker-owned models for their businesses. So those are our 5 tracks. And then I'm now going to pass it to Paul to talk about community.
So as Salome mentioned, I'm Paul. I'm the head of community here. My purview is the people, so the open call, the mentors, and I work closely with Brian, Salome, and Raul to talk about who we are here at New Inc., who we're inviting to be here, and what are we working towards. So I'm just going to go through a couple slides that describe what it's like to be here, and I would just like to pause and talk a little bit about our community philosophy. New Inc. is a place for people to launch ambitious projects, no matter where they are in their career. So there are a lot of offerings in our incubator program, but personally, I think the greatest asset of New Inc. are the people who are in the cohort. So your colleagues, these people will be your contemporaries in 5 or 6 years' time. Y'all will be the successful, glorified people on the stage and changing the world. As Salome mentioned, I also think that New Ink is a place for radicals, outliers, misfits, dreamers, and they are the necessary genius we need in the world today. In short, I think our community philosophy is to incubate and foster ideas of radical change. And we have a firm belief here at New Ink that what artists do, advance society via cultural change. And it's our mission to center QT BIPOC voices. We don't believe in gatekeepers. We believe in sharing resources and opportunities and thinking of alternative modes to reach success in this world. And so community being the friendships or the potential collaborations, I'm just gonna show a couple pictures from our year 10 experience. This is at camp. You can see some people playing a friendly game of chess. Here are some members: Adele Lynn, Tao Lee Goff, Martina Alunga, Abrams, and Steve Renault. This is them at our holiday party, which was very fun this year. And here's a nice shot of us on the rooftop during an ice cream break, again, during our orientation process that Brian will talk a little bit about. How do we achieve these relationships? Firstly, we have monthly work shares here where 3 members can present their projects or what they're working on here at New Ink. People are able to receive in-progress ideas or critiques. We also have group outings. Every month we have a community event led by one of the staff members. Sometimes these are like museum visits or visiting a play together, or a lot of times they are also initiated by our members. So if people are hosting an exhibition or working on a conference, a symposium, we can also fold these into our community outings. So I'll describe a little bit more detail what our membership offers. And this is like what it feels like to be at New Ink. So if you are accepted into the incubator program, you'll have dedicated staff attention. All of us, or most of us here, host hours where we meet with our membership to talk one-on-one. Not only that, you'll be assigned to a track. And in that track, you'll meet with your colleagues, up to 12 to 15 people, and you'll have a track mentor. I'll describe mentorship in a minute. And monthly, you'll meet with your track and work on projects together and kind of decide what path you will move forward together with. In addition to mentors in residence, which are your track mentors, we have dedicated mentorship. So during this chaotic frenzy of kind of like a speed dating round, we introduce you to up to 10 mentors. You have like a brief chat with them, and ultimately you rank them, and we send this information off to a matchmaking service, and you get paired with one person throughout the year. You're expected to meet anywhere from 8 to 10 times. However, you'll hear from some of our members here today, sometimes they meet a lot more than that. And this is where you'll really work in a way that you can bounce ideas of like where your project could go and how this person can help you shape your business model or your goals or your social media platforms. Lastly, we have office hour mentors, which are a little bit tinier in scope, and you'll have priority access to that. Raul will speak a little bit more about demo later on. You'll have an opportunity to show there. And then here in this office, you'll have opportunities to co-work here. So all of our incubator members are able to come here, work here, bring guests here. We also allow people to like propose events and host things here as well. So these are the benefits or the offerings that we have. And you'll see up at the top that our unsubsidized rate is $150 a month, or just north of $1,700 for the year. And we do have a limited number of subsidies, primarily focused on QT BIPOC people. You can read more about our subsidies on the apply page. And those are $60 a month, or around $720 for the year. So now I'll give a little bit more insight as to what our mentorship program looks like. So we have 150 different mentors here. You can see a nice little array of them here. This is only 75 of them. And here are our current mentors in residence. So Danielle McFadder, who has been our mentor in residence for the extended realities track for the last 3 years. Dr. Harakuti and Caroline Willard, for the first time, are starting and finishing the cooperative studies track. Jessica Kwok from the storefront of art and architecture is leading our social architecture track. Aileen Isagon Skyers, who's a Web3 expert, independent curator, writer, leads our art and code track. And Sarah Najad, formerly of New Lab and also a professor at NYU, leads our creative science track. In addition to mentors and residents, we have community mentors as well for our large community. In addition to our incubator members, we have roughly 40 to 50 community members. Oftentimes, these are alumni of the program. They don't have the same offerings as an incubator member, but they oftentimes co-work. Sometimes they pop in and offer like a little tag or a tease of history of like how New Ink has changed. So this year we have Sloan Leal from Flock Studio returning. Sloan just opened up a co-working space in Philadelphia called Quirk. And unnamed friends. Some of them are alumni, ex-staff members, Alex Darby, Bhavik Singh, Austin Roby, and Noya Koavi. You're gonna hear from Taüs later, but these are our dedicated mentors. And as I described before, these are people who are able to offer a lot more time than our office hour mentors. So they carry a project throughout the year. The matchmaking process is a little bit exciting, but we'll get more into that details later in the year. And lastly, our office hour mentors. I'm so sorry, these names are incorrect. These are professionals from a variety of different fields. Sometimes it's not Noam Segal there, that's Winslow Porter. He was an alumni, and that's Raven Ruffin, a former staff member here. But for example, if you wanted to learn about digital strategy, you could talk to Shama Rahman. If you were curious about your graphic identity or graphic typefaces, etc., you could book a meeting with Nonsi Mutiti. And lastly, if you're curious about creating a business plan or something unique in a business model, you could speak to Neil Ramsey. And Neil also works in New Ink in multiple formats, and Brian is going to talk to you a little bit about our professional development program right now, of which Neil also participates in. So I'll pass it to Brian right now.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Like Paul mentioned, my name is Brian. I am the program manager, and I'm going to, in the next few minutes, attempt to describe what it is that we refer to here as professional development. And I use the word attempt because New Ink is not a typical startup incubator, and so we don't do typical professional development. No shade intended, obviously. But our professional development program in its current iteration takes shape around your questions, your challenges, you know, the experiences and skills and knowledge that you bring with you as members. Occasionally, sure, it'll manifest as a lecture, but really more often than not, it'll feel and materialize as a conversation. Maybe a collective thought experience or experiment, maybe a somatic exercise guided by a facilitator, maybe a moment of silent reflection or journaling. We're living through a pretty, I think, volatile moment in the world. And so I think we try to approach everything that we do here with a level of care and intentionality that I think reflects the kind of work that you would put into your practice, into your work, and therefore the kind of learning goals that you come to New Ink with. And so it's really not a one-size-fits-all situation, right? And as a matter of fact, during your time here at New Ink, your practice is probably going to evolve along with the context that it exists in. So it's really not even a one-size-fits-one situation. So what actually does that mean? Well, for us, it means that every year, professional development will look a little bit different. So yes, you can use the themes and topics that you see on the screen here to sort of guide and anchor some of the expectations that you have around what professional development might look like here, but also recognize that your experience of the program will definitely manifest in a different way um, than someone else's experience of the program here, even during the same year. So grain of salt, right? Um, but these are basically the buckets of learning needs that we tend to gravitate towards throughout a quote unquote typical year. So in the business alchemy bucket, we cover themes like aligning on vision, managing finances, legal structure, pricing your offerings, all of the sort of business judo that you might want to learn about in order to make your practice not only sustainable, but also sustaining. Um, Another bucket, cultivate and connect, points to sessions that are about how to connect with an audience in an authentic way and how to represent your work and yourself online versus maybe in a conversation with a potential funder. And then we have this third kind of wild card, kind of fluid bucket, because again, every year is kind of a wild card, kind of a fluid year, where we focus on, this year, we're focusing on playful intelligence. And basically, that's all about play, um, thinking about the advent of automation, generative AI, and really, more specifically, how we can be with each other um, in this sort of oftentimes chaotic and very fast evolving context. Um, so at this moment, there might be a question that comes up in your mind, like, how is it possible to cover all of this in a single year? And the short answer is it's probably not. Um, but another way to think about these buckets is as potential paths, right? That you can use to curate your experience um, and your learning adventure here. So let's say, sorry, let's say you applied to the program last year and you got in. Congrats, that's pretty cool. Um, in this timeline, you'll learn pretty early on that the year is broken up into about 3 phases or seasons, and that in the first season, the program really kicks off with camp, which is our 3-day sort of orientation experience. Um, and camp really sets the tone for the next sort of few months of sessions in the fundamentals of doing business as a creative. The program becomes a little bit more path specific in our second phase during the spring and winter months. And then we shift focus kind of as an organization during our third phase, which is when we kick off RAMP, which is our preparation and production support program for our annual festival, which Raul will tell you a little bit more about in a bit. And so maybe in this first phase, you sit in on a few one-off sessions like an AI film screening and a seminar during camp. And then you also attend one of our Foundation Friday sessions that occur monthly. And this one happens to be covering taxes for creatives. You also sign up for a working group on creative business essentials to sort of brush up on how it is that galleries work with artists. And it meets once every 2 weeks for about 6 sessions, so it works out with your very busy schedule, which kind of gets chaotic in October. So you end up having to miss the first seasonal intensive. It's a day of back-to-back sessions focused on a single sort of connecting theme. And this one is about the labor of care. So maybe you watch a recording of it that we posted in our arena. Maybe for season 2, you want to really get strategic about your projects. So you join another working group. Only this one meets weekly to cover sort of the essentials of strategic planning and road mapping. And then in the third season, you find out that you're participating in demo. So you pop into one of several ramp sessions, and this one covers how to build a deck and deliver an effective pitch. And really, the incubator year kind of comes and goes, kind of like that. But at the end of it, you will still have access to the arena, which has all of our recordings and materials from the year of the program. And you'll be able to revisit that whenever you like. And you'll want to do that because a lot more is covered throughout the year than the snapshot that we just sort of went through. This year, for example, we've had working groups and sessions talking about yourself and about your practice with potential collaborators and thought partners. That one was run by Holly Murchison, who is currently a mentor. We've had Caroline Washington lead a group on approaching branding through the principles of love and care. We've also had Callum Bowden, who is a co-founder and maintainer at Trust, an artist-run organization in Berlin, who is currently leading a working group on prototyping collective organizational bodies. So that's just to list a few. And most of these offerings are fully virtual. But a few of these sessions might happen in one of the conference rooms right here in the space. So I think maybe now is a good time to hand the mic to Osmane to talk about space.
Hi everyone, once again, I'm Asmani, the department coordinator. Thank you so much for the adjustment. As Paul said earlier, we're in 250 Hudson right now. It's our temporary space while construction is being done at the museum. So through your membership, you will have 24/7 access to this space through ID cards. And in the space itself, there are 3 conference rooms that are free to book through our booking system. There's desk space with monitors, also free to use. There are 3 private soundproof phone booths in the back. They're on a first come, first served basis. And we also have a kitchen pantry with a bunch of snacks and drinks free for all members. And we also have a roof deck for outdoor working. You might have seen a photo of it earlier on in this presentation. And there are also lockers for personal storage. And we're super excited about our production equipment borrowing system. We currently have a bunch of different cameras and VR headsets, once again, that are free to borrow. And we are super excited to also offer this space to those who want to host events and gatherings. And just a note about the space is that it mainly functions in a 10 to 6 business hour limitation. And so the HVAC does stop after 6 p.m. and the freight elevator does stop at 5 p.m. And so just to keep in mind in terms of hosting events and gatherings in the space. But once again, welcome. And I'll pass to Salome.
All right, so I know we've gotten a couple questions about this space. This is a temporary space. So we've moved here in March 2022, but typically or in the past, we were right next door to the museum, so in that little white circle. So that building, if you've been down, I've walked down the Bowery recently, will have seen is completely demolished because the museum is going through an expansion process. So in spring of 2025, we will return to the new museum where we'll have our own floor with a fabrication lab and a media lab. But in this interim period, year 11 cohort will take place in this space. I also wanted to just share one other space that a select number of New Inkers have access to. We co-founded a space called Onassis Onyx in partnership with Onassis Foundation. This space is in the gallery level of Olympic Tower in Midtown. And Onassis Onyx is a development and presentation space for extended reality work. Our XR track has access to the space and other members can have access to it, but it's on a case-by-case basis. Onyx Studio has a full motion capture setup. It has high-performing computers. It has VR equipment, immersive sound setup, and a lot of other fun toys to play with. But if you're curious about this, you can come find me afterwards. And then I will pass it now to Raul to talk about our public programs.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Salome. I'm Raul Zbengech. I am the New Ink cheerleader. I mean, deputy director. Among many responsibilities I have at New Ink, one of my main ones is public programming. So I want to introduce a little bit about what we've been doing over the past 2 years and also give you a bit of a preview of what's coming up. We have taken the opportunity to organize talks, performances, lectures, exhibitions, both in spaces that are part of our New Ink New Museum ecosystem and a lot of partner spaces, sometimes with our New Ink members, sometimes with industry leaders, but always trying to connect the dots between disparate ideas, concepts, and stories that take place in our industry to kind of advance to the public what it is that we actually do, not just here at New Ink, but in this relatively opaque middle ground between art, design, technology. So in the past, we've hosted a creative science dinner at Oko Farms and at Ace Hotel Brooklyn, where we share a meal and we invite New Ink members in the creative science track to present site-specific projects. We have organized a punk show on Times Square this September to kick off our 10th year, but also to bring to light a few stories around DIY, like a DIY punk scene, the early adoption of peer-to-peer networks, and a unknown history on Times Square as a connecting ground between both like punk and hip hop movements that all took place there on Times Square. We commissioned writers and we published a zine to tell these stories. Other things, we've organized talks at Onassis Onyx that Salome was talking about, this time with Ian Cheng and a frequent collaborator, Antoine Catala. We did a soft launch of Somewhere Good at Ace Hotel New York. That was what we called the Somewhere Good Spiral, where it was a spiraling conversation. We hosted a Next Web Summit that was the result of some grant making we did together with a partner at the New Museum Sky Room. And I organized an exhibition at New Lab a couple of summers ago with our creative science track. So you're probably all wondering, you've heard the hype already of what's going on with Demo, what is Demo? Demo is the evolution of Demo Day. It's a multi-day festival where we really anchor and center the work of our New Ink members, and we try to invite an audience of people who can help advance their careers. Sometimes it's investors, sometimes it's curators, creative directors, foundation officers. Really, we try to cultivate an audience of people who can help take you to the next level of your career. This year and the previous year, we look at the tracks, our 5 tracks that you've seen before, to be thematic umbrellas of the festival. We anchor our programming with 3 days of programming on stage where our New Ink members present, but they're also joined alongside on stage by leading performers and keynote speakers who bookend their presentations. That was M. Lamar kicking off the Creative Science Day last year. We have started organizing showcases of our members' work at the festival. These are opportunities to show work that's over a more durational time period. Sometimes they take the shape of exhibitions, sometimes they're more demo, sometimes they're parties. It depends, and each year is a little different because they're tailored to each of our tracks. And then, of course, we have dinners, power lunches, parties, DJ sets, everything you can imagine in a festival. The true glue of making connections at the festival, we try to make that happen in Demo. And finally, this is my this is my like closing slide for this one. Participation in Demo is by selection. Not all New Ink members are able to present, though a majority of the ones who apply do get to present. This is our big list of our presenters last year. It's 80 plus people whose work we presented. It was a big lift. We're gonna do it again. But you don't have to worry about the selection criteria for demo this year because Paul John is going to come back and tell you how to submit your best application to get into New Ink in the first place. Give it up for Paul John.
Thanks, Raul. Raul. Um, so I'm going to go over some of the criteria that our reviewers use when reviewing your application. So this is like what they're thinking about, what we ask them to think about. So a clear commitment to growth. Are you able to receive criticism? Are you looking with a plan of how the New Ink programs that Brian spoke about, that I spoke about, mentorship, are you thinking about how these can be used in your practice? A strong practice working across disciplines. Have you exhibited your work? Have you collaborated with people on exhibiting other things? Have you started an initiative or a cooperatively owned business and you've worked with an audience? You have recognized an audience that you're trying to work with. Advancement of cultural or driving social and economic and ecological change. Do you keep up with current events? Are you active in the world? You're not in a cave. You're thinking about what the future you want looks like and the ways to move towards that. And lastly, community-minded. Are you able to work with other people? Are you open to collaborating with other people? Yeah, like being able to be generous, set boundaries, respect boundaries, work through awkward or uncomfortable situations, and be a part of like a shared space. This is an open office. We have many working groups. We have many different voices, many different people from all over the world participating. So, you know, the ability to kind of set your ego aside and maybe be open to new experiences. And in terms of the application proper, the submittable, I know, not so dreamy. We spend a lot of time creating a very detailed apply page. So please, please look at our apply page, read it. I know it's long, but all of the questions you're going to ask are likely answered there. On the submittable app itself, just be careful that it's a dynamic application. So if you are, for example, applying as a collective and there are 3 members, just be sure to realize when you select certain things, new prompts may come up. We might ask demographic information for your members that you're applying with as well. We do require a deck. On our application page, you'll see a bit.ly link. It has a shell deck that we've made with questions on it that we would like you to answer. So you don't have to follow the format that we've set there. You can make it in your style. You can make it on a piece of paper and take a picture of it and put it in a deck. We don't really require it to be like fancy or animated, but we do ask that you answer the questions in the deck. That's going to help us and our reviewers see if this is a good fit. And lastly, the note, this may seem confusing, but you're able to select which tracks you prefer to be on. However, the selection process is us determining a cohort, who should be together. So while you might have a desire to be an XR or art and code, we might think that your work was more applicable in social architecture or cooperative studies. There's also an open to multiple option, and in that case, we will like see where those applications fit as well. So before, we're gonna hear from some current members in a minute, but I know there are probably a lot of questions. I know that there are a lot of questions on Zoom that we can reiterate and answer. So if you'd like to ask a question, we would ask that you come up to the mic so that the people on Zoom can hear your question, and we can start the Q&A right now.
Thank you, Paul. I'm also here to, like, if you don't want to weave through the crowd, I can, like, you can say your question from where you're at comfortably with like your seltzer or wine, and I can repeat it to the folks on Zoom. But I know that there was a question in the chat already on Zoom about whether or not New Inc. Accepts remote participation, which we do. I said in the chat that about 20 to 30% of our cohort is made up of people from outside of New York. There was a second question to that, which is, can someone describe the experience of being a remote participant? So maybe Brian, I can ask you what that feels like.
Yeah, I think mainly because our professional development program is so hybrid or virtual, this is kind of like the most pronounced component of New Inc. that you'll experience when you're not in the space. And so, yeah, all of our sessions, we pull in facilitators and experts from all over the world. And we really want to make programming as accessible as possible for y'all, regardless of if you're based in New York or not. So you'll find most of our recordings on our arena, which I mentioned earlier, if you can't make it during the time. And usually we'll have a pretty simple Zoom setup or work with the facilitator who will set up a Zoom. I wonder if there's anything else. Yeah. Our main hours for programming are basically regular working hours, East Coast time. So definitely think about that if you're applying from somewhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm. Time zone challenges. Questions in the room? I see one over here. It's still, for the new building, we're still figuring it out, but it will be like wood and some digital fabrication equipment as well, like maybe a small CNC machine. But that, is happening at the tail end of this cohort year, so we're not sure if year 11 will have access to that yet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what kind of equipment, like AV equipment, is available to cohort members? I heard sound, music. Were there other things? Displays, LEDs. So I'm looking for Asmani, who can talk a little bit about what's available in our equipment rental room.
Sure. So in terms of cameras, we have two Canon basic DSLR cameras. They come with lenses, batteries. We also have some recording mics for audio. We have additional lighting. We also have some VR sets. The Quest Pro, I believe, is the latest one that we have right now. And then we do have like tripods, some camera bags, some nitty gritty specifics to accommodate the lighting and the camera. Oh yeah, of course the big one. Also like our sound system and the speakers. Gatch is also our like production person, so it's also on a case by case basis for more of the specific DJ setup, for example, is also available, and also these lights are available. So yeah, we have like a pretty large range, and we're also super accommodating if people really want equipment that we don't yet have.
Yeah, and I'll just also again make a plug for Onyx, for Onassis Onyx. So if you're on the XR track, and again case by case basis, there's tons of equipment there, like a Genelex 360 sound system. So I think it just depends on what kind of audio stuff you want to do. Maybe find me afterwards and we can talk about that. Cool. Other questions? I see one over here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how is like the process of prototyping supported in the program? Probably maybe through professional development. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think we try to put on professional development programs that'll sort of help serve as like anchor points for the ways that you're developing and thinking about your practice, um, as well as like, yeah, I'm thinking of strategic planning and road mapping, which is kind of like the baseline way that we support folks in really kickstarting what feels like a new direction in your practice probably, and really getting organized in that sense. I would say as far as like hands-on prototyping, um, like what kind of, are you thinking of like literal like hardware products, or you're thinking, I like that. Yeah.
So I think one of the greatest parts of New Ink is that we have a really wide mentorship program. So like a lot of our mentors, that's what they do. They do IP, they're lawyers, they're also prototypers. So booking office hour mentorship oftentimes can like lead you to connections. We're also working on like like a shared resource list where like all like new inkers and staff are like placing like fabrication shops that we work with, or people all over the world, where like you're in Australia, you need to print something on a canvas. Who's your person, right? Um, One of the things that we use here at New Ink to communicate is Slack. I know it sounds horrible, but it's a really great archive of like 10 years of people like asking, hey, how do you do your taxes? Or mentors popping in and out, staff popping in and out. So it's like a really comprehensive list of like the New Ink hive mind.
I saw another hand go up somewhere in the front over here. Yes. Yeah, so the question was, which tracks are high in demand? I would say that probably our art and code and XR tracks are higher in demand, but only because they've been with us for a long time, right? They're like legacy tracks. So they're real, there's like a real community developing around those tracks. But I think, you know, proportionally, you have like, I'm trying to figure out in your question if you're trying to like game which is most difficult, the hottest track to get into. But I mean, I guess those two, yes. But we can talk about that after if you want to figure out track placement. Yeah. Yeah. So are there spaces, does New Ink have access to spaces to set up projections, or temporarily maybe install work and just test projections? So yeah, so that kind of stuff can definitely happen at Onassis Onyx. You can book room. They have a booking system where you can, there are like 4 different spaces in there where you can also rent a projector from them and kind of test that kind of work. Also here, I mean, I'd love to see that kind of stuff happen here in conference rooms. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, I can. So asking for more information about the social architecture track. You know what? You're going to hear from a member of the social architecture track soon. So let's hold off on that one. I saw someone standing in the back here maybe had a question. Okay. No. The other's one right here. Yeah, great question. So, can you be an artist and be in this program? Do you have to be a business owner? Maybe Raul, you want to answer this question?
I can answer. Happy to. You do not have to be a business owner. You can be an independent artist. We don't look for artist or business. I would go back to the criteria that Paul was talking about, because in there we'll be looking for, are you in a process of growth? Are you in connection with your community? Are you advancing timely issues? Those are better barometers. And we also kind of have internal philosophy here that like artists operate small businesses, they pay taxes, they hire people, they collaborate with people, they create cultural capital. So it's irrelevant to us. We support both.
Thank you. Brian, should we go to the Zoom world?
Yeah, let's say what's up to the Zoom people. There are sort of like a pair of questions that are kind of in a similar thread. One's about kind of like application limitations. So someone asked, are there any age limitations to apply? And then someone along that line, maybe a more detailed question is this program appropriate for experimental artists? Because there's a lot of language around focused sort of on creating a creative business.
Yeah, okay. Two great questions. I'm excited to answer these. So, no, there's no limit. There are no limits to age. Like, you can be any age and be in this program. The one rule is that you cannot be actively in a school program, so you can't be a student. We do accept PhD candidates who are, complete with coursework and you're just working on your dissertation. But yeah, the one rule is you can't be a student. And then the other question is, do you accept experimental artists? Yes, of course. I hope that's all of us in this room, that we're all experimenting and tinkering and working on something that feels like new or unnamed. So absolutely. I think the language that you're going to be finding on the apply page is that we're trying to help you figure out how your experimental thing can be sustainable for you.
Yeah, and then the other kind of thread is about where in your practice you should be for applying. So someone had a question about like what advice do we have for applicants who are already running a successful young business and want to grow and expand the business with new creative works? And then what defines launch? Like how do long-term projects, initiatives fit into the intended stage of this program?
Yeah, Raul, do you want to answer that one?
We have an intergenerational cohort. We try to design a community that includes both people at early stages of their projects that are just thinking about them, and we want them to develop them here. But we also support people who are a little bit further along in their career, who might have work in a museum collection already, who might have gallery representation, or who might have a team that they've already hired and they need maybe to move into an office. I think the advice I would give when it comes from how you are applying and how you present yourself to us, present yourself how you already are. Tell us where you are in your process, tell us what you're trying to do, and let us do the work of assembling a cohort of people who support each other across generations, disciplines, career levels. There's no need to project more than you have or have too much. We want to hear it all.
Thanks. Any other questions in the room? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question was, do we consider financial viability as part of the selection process? Will a project make money? No, we don't. I mean, there's part of the application where we want to know like exactly what Raul just said, like where you are, and like if that is one of your goals, we want to hear about that. But we don't place bets during the the application process. Absolutely not. I think that we've actually supported projects that people did not understand like what they were, if there was even a market for them. And that's, I think, very much the strength of New Ink, is like figuring out, like helping you figure out what, like how your project can be viable. Mm-hmm. There's one in the back. Yes. So the question was, has there ever been a case where a member shifts tracks in the program? Maybe Paul, you can answer this.
So I don't think anybody's actually shifted tracks mid-year. I could be wrong, but a lot. So New Ink is a one-year program. You are allowed to apply for a second year, so you can have a second year as a returning member. We admit about 30% of returning members back into the program, and at that moment, people have switched tracks. So Tal Ligoff was a member of the XR track, realized that their work was more in the creative science realm, so transitioned over there. And similarly, Leela Shankar was in the social architecture track last year, or
Creative
creative
science
science
to
last
social
year,
architecture.
and then moved into social architecture. So there are moments for these reflections and transformations.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, let's pivot now to member presentations, and then, of course, after that, there's time for Q&A and just mixing and mingling with us. So first up, Ngozi is going to present.
Like this? Okay, sure. So hi everyone, my name is Ngozi Olojede, and I am a spatial designer in the social architecture track. I say spatial design very intentionally because I like how it hybridizes various design disciplines to study how people interact with space, and that's really my core interest, is the psychology and politics that surround space making. And this is really born from just how I was socialized as a human being. I'm a bit of a third culture kid, American born, South African raised with stints in Beijing and New Jersey, and my family's Nigerian. And so I think just inhabiting so many different places from a young age gave me a really haptic experience of space. I could feel very viscerally how each space felt so different from the other, even though, you know, I had no concept really of like time or distance. And so I think that is what sparked my curiosity in design as to why spaces feel so different from each other. So I'm currently freelancing, and my focus is to create immersive spatial experiences, utilizing design, strategy, and communications across architecture, production design, exhibition design, landscape, and experience design. So my core interest really is international development. I studied international relations and African studies in school. And so I'm interested in design as a mechanism for international development. So what role does design play in the development of a society? So through New Ink, I'm formalizing my freelance practice into my own spatial design studio, which will be called Studio Ogan. Ogan is my mother's last name, and it means the traveler, which I think suits me well. And I want to launch my studio with a special project in mind. The aim of Studio Ogan is to embed marginalized perspectives into the built environment through spatial design and art. Currently, from my understanding, I find that the built environment and related industries, architecture and design, are dominated by white male perspectives, and the built environment is authored by those who get to design it. So when we exclude other narratives from the built environment, it forces people to navigate a society that was not built with their interests in mind. And so the goal here, or the dream rather, is to design towards a sustainable built environment that is enriched by the wealth of knowledge of all of its inhabitants. And the goal is for that to be geared towards a built environment that inspires collective care, enjoyment, and thriving. So the special project in mind is called Itsunu, which is an immersive audio-spatial experience that draws on African and diasporic principles of spirituality and community to facilitate a Black understanding of healing. And so this project is really born from the grief that I've inhabited in my mid to late 20s and serves as a sort of remembrance of the cousins I've lost in that time. So it will also pay homage to water and utilize culturally relevant and natural recyclable materials, mainly drawing heavily on draped textiles, perhaps supported by bendable engineered wood, recycled plastic, or masonite. And I'm really trying to create a space that evokes the soothing and majestic, but also daunting power of the natural world. And so I want spatial elements here to kind of discuss or draw from, interrogate perhaps, the influence of that the landscapes have on like our spirituality and culture, and will ultimately serve as a platform for 3 independent Black peer artists who center healing generational trauma in their music. And they span various genres from R&B to neo soul, folk, rap, and hip hop. And this is a very transdisciplinary project, and I'm really excited to see my vision elevated by the collaborators that I'll be working with, which will be 3 musicians that I mentioned earlier, 2 textile artists, a sculptor, and a sound designer. So that's what I'm working on through New Ink. I hope to see some of you next year. Good luck. I hope you apply.
Thank you, Ngozi. We actually have Ngozi's dedicated mentor on the Zoom. And so I just wanted to introduce Taüs Jafar. And maybe Taüs, you could just describe like a little bit about how you met Ngozi and what the experience has been like working with him, just briefly. Whoa.
That's amazing. Should we leave that for a second
The
instead?
easiest net art ever.
Sure. Paul, can you hear me? Can you hear me in the room?
We can hear you.
Thank you for that element of sound design. Yeah, so I'm Taüs. I am Ngozi's mentor. I was a year 2 member. And we met during there's sort of like a quick roulette like speed. It's like speed dating. Yeah. It's like speed dating, but platonic and about about projects that mentors or it's just sort of like to see if you vibe with the mentor and mentee. So it's quick. Mentees choose who they talk to, and Ngozi and I had a great conversation, and immediately I was like, I would love to work with you. And so that's what happened. Paul, should I go into a little bit more about what the dynamic is working together? What would be helpful?
I think maybe just describe like how often you meet and like what you're working on with Ngozi and their project.
Cool. So we have like a regular bi-weekly meeting schedule, which we set up together. It was what was going to work for us at the beginning of the year. And it felt comfortable and right. And then we left flexibility in there to adjust if needed. And a big part of the way I've loved working, I've done this 3 years in a row. A big part of the way that I work with artists has been through inquiry-based, just sort of an encouraging inquiry-based practice. My background primarily as a creative is in sound and sound design, but that practice is informed by a several-year path of training to become a non-dualist meditation teacher, non-dualist philosophy and meditation teacher. So that's kind of the flavor I bring to mentoring. So I don't know if Ngozi would corroborate, but basically the year arc ends up being slightly existential, I think, for some of the artists I work with. And I sort of try to ask questions that engage them at the heart of what they really want. And it is very, very special to get to see somebody's growth arc over the course of a year, which is partly why I came back to mentor, because as a member, I experienced it and it was beyond what I expected. It was beyond what I expected. I had a lovely little glow up in a direction that I didn't intend.
Cool. Thank you so much, Taüs. And now we'll hear from Craftwork, who are in our creative science track.
Awesome. Thank you for having us in the program and here tonight. We're really excited to tell you about us. We are Craftwork, Nicole and Victoria. Craftwork is a multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary art and design studio, and we're really focused on the intersections between textiles and technology. We're creating installations, organizing community-based events, and everything in between. We have a broad skill set between the two of us that spans from more ancient techniques like weaving and knitting to more modern and futuristic techniques like coding and programming. We're really excited to be able to blend the wisdoms of both those sort of ancient and futuristic techniques and utilizing the wisdoms of the craft techniques as well as the wisdoms of the digital ones.
So Victoria and I have been collaborating for years, and Craftwork is a relatively new studio, and something we're working on at New Ink is how do we bring our past experiences, our past projects together and kind of focus as a studio. So here at New Ink and for Demo Day, we're focusing on a project called Ancient Futures. This is a triple woven installation made with soft electronics and fiber optics, where visitors can walk up to the textile, share a secret or a story or a message, and the textile will translate the sentiment of that message into light and reflect it back. And the idea is that as this piece travels from different locations and through different communities, these stories will be documented in this textile through time and space. This is a node to how textiles have always held stories across time and space, and just a modern precedent, utilizing kind of fiber optics and soft electronics to create more diverse and expressive forms of technology. From the onset of this project, we've decided that we would showcase prototypes and our work in progress. Because we're so often working with materials that aren't found within the same space, we do a lot of prototyping and making, and for Demo Day, we're going to show a more finalized version of this project.
So in addition to working on Ancient Futures, which is the project that Nicole just described, we frequently collaborate with other artists, designers, and community organizers. So just a few projects to highlight that we have done with other folks outside our team of Craftwork. A project called Computer 1.0, which is a textile that's woven with a hollow tubing through which an intentional series of liquid and air flows to create a kinetic water and cotton-based screen. We are also in the post-production phase of a feature film about the domestic knitting machine, which had a popular heyday in the 80s, but then went out of favor, but has sort of come back into the more modern and younger generations of craft communities. So that documentary we're still working on, but looking forward to sharing with y'all in the future. And we've collaborated with a production collective here in the city.
So a pillar of our studio and something we're like trying to figure out how to talk about is research. That research spans across storytelling as well as material research. We particularly have a focus on a practice and study we're calling algorithmic textures, where we're exploring how modern day technologies and specifically digital software can be reflected in textiles, trying to marry the computational roots that textiles bring to technology. This is a project called Weaving Quasi-Crystals that kind of takes that research into actual form. It's a collaboration with a mathematician named Philip Engel, where we're exploring color, math through woven structures. And a big part of our research is we're always utilizing textiles and soft technologies and trying to find ways where we can make more expressive forms and diverse forms of electronics. So this is an example, RFID systems are pervasive, how we could maybe utilize that interaction in different ways on our bodies to create more intimate forms of technology.
So we are part of the creative science track, which has been a really wonderful experience so far. We've had the chance to work with a variety of folks, including James, our mentor, who you'll meet in a moment, which has been wonderful. We're hosting on Saturday a lichen dye party with our creative science track at our studio, which we're really excited about. I'd say one of the things that we were most excited about in doing this program was the community, and we love our creative science track and excited to sort of see how we might be able to collaborate within our track, either just on a one-day event at our studio by making pigments from lichen or into the future. So thank you for letting us share more about us.
So let me introduce to you another dedicated mentor, who's James Rohrbach, who has been working with Craftwork this year, and I'll let them talk a little bit about what their year has looked like. I know it's been a lot.
Hi everyone, I'm James Rohrbach. I am a performance artist and an entrepreneur, and I built a couple different businesses, and so I wanted to be a mentor here because I wanted to use all of the stuff I've learned in business, painfully in many cases, to help other artists thrive. And so we met through the matchmaking process that you've all already heard about. I would just say one other thing that is great about the matchmaking process, at least for me as a mentor, is that in and of itself is a piece of community building and networking. Just in the past 24 hours, I've been in touch with 2 other groups that I didn't end up getting paired with about other stuff that just kind of has come up. So that's been like a really beautiful and unexpected part of being a mentor here. Do you guys want to maybe talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing?
Where to start?
For us, a big part of the program was like getting our studio off the ground. Closer, yeah. A big part of us was getting our studio off the ground, so we've really worked with James on kind of the business development side of our studio.
Yeah, I'd say that we both came into this with strong freelance practices, which we have been over time practicing and honing in on, but working together and forming a studio that's a multi-person entity is newer. So James has helped us with the nitty-gritty of that all the way up to the big picture. And it's been really useful to have a sounding board and these like regular check-ins that keep us accountable to the goals we've set.
Yeah, and I mean, I love it. It's beautiful and really fun. And we had, so the way that what we did was we had a first meeting and we kind of defined how we wanted to work together in that first meeting. And we said, why don't we do like an all day or half day session at your studio? And just like, I just want to like learn everything. Just tell me everything. And so we did this like 5-hour afternoon at their studio in November maybe or December. And it was super productive and learned so much. And then we kind of made a roadmap of, okay, here are the things we're going to work on this year and in this order. And now that's just become our regular thing. So Friday afternoon, we're getting together again.
So I know there were a lot of questions on the Zoom that got answered. and Brian was going to share some of those answers with y'all. And then we can open up for a little bit more Q&A. We also have here in person a lot of empanadas. So perhaps we can like answer a couple of these questions, take a couple more, and then we'll break out to eat some empanadas, have some drinks, and you can grab one of us and we can talk more intimately.
Yeah, the empanadas are busting, y'all. Get on that. So someone in the chat had asked earlier if they're going to be a student in October, could they still apply? Oh, sorry. And then there was another question on if the residency is appropriate for people who would be balancing it with a full-time job, or if they're expected, or is it expected that the cohort members abandon current working duties to dedicate full-time work dedication to the residency for the year? And Salome, thanks for the answer. No, there are members in our program who have full-time jobs. We estimate that there's at least 4+ hours of New Ink programming a week, so we hope that you can make room for in-person or virtual participation to get the most out of the experience. Someone asked if there's any advice on navigating application program if you're not sure which track to choose. You can always select open to multiple tracks in the application if you're unsure. There was a question on applying as an individual versus a collective. They asked if the collaborators may not be able to dedicate as much time to the program, would they welcome or drop in from time to time? This is kind of a conversation that I think we should have as you advance through the interview process, but definitely apply as a collective if you're a collective. And then there's 2 questions in the chat. One of them, I don't remember if we answered, but is about access. What are the accessibility offerings at New Ink, and what are masking norms in the community, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's work to be done to further define and build a culture of access at New Ink. And so part of the application, we ask, like, if you have needs, well, we can ask that again through the interview process. But if there are things that you specifically need to show up as a full participant and member of the community, we want to hear that, and we will do what's needed to make this a space that's accommodating for all of us.
And then there was another question, is the art and code track exclusively art at the intersection of tech?
Yes, but I'm curious what you might be applying with. So maybe that's like an offline conversation. You can email us at opencall@newink.org. But yes, the track is called Art and Code. So there's some tech element to it, but we're here supporting the experimental. So let me find out what you're doing. Any other questions in the room before we move to mix and mingle and empanadas? All right, y'all, I'm gonna pass it to Paul to just close us out.
All right, real talk. 10 calendar days until the application is due. It's not a long one, but it's a thoughtful one. So you might want to get some eyes and ears on it. Fortunately, there are many people here curious about applying to the program. Please connect. Please work on these applications together. Having some reflection never hurts. New Ink is all about community, so feel free to begin it now. We have about 30 minutes to eat, snack, vibe. You can grab some of us. Not all of the team are staying, but Salome, myself, and Gatch will be here. So you can grab us and ask any questions. All right? Thank you so much, y'all.
Got this bud in my bed, should I break down the tree and help